Welcome to Yerba Mate Talks.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Sherba Mate Talks. This is Dr. J. Looking forward to chatting with you guys again this week about how we can change our mind. Sorry about my late start. I've got a super sad story here. I sat down in this recliner, right? It's kind of comfortable. I got this nice recliner going on here. And what happens? I suddenly feel like, oh, my stomach is a little upset. I'm not feeling great. My stomach isn't 100%, and I should be fine. It's 10 minutes till I need to start here. I need to get ready, and it got worse and worse. And I don't know if you've ever thrown up in a recliner before, but there's just not a lot of good options on where to throw up. There's just, left, right, at your legs. There's nowhere good. And so that was quite a cleanup, trying to clean up all my puke all over the place. But I didn't stream last week because work stuff, and I didn't want to cancel. And so even though my stream here is starting pretty late, I didn't want to skip it. So here we are. Looking forward to talking about the book this week. So our book this week, we read the next chapter. Remember, we're doing the book about Change My Mind by, I believe, McRaney, I think is how you say his name. And this week, he kind of goes with anecdotes, some stories about people's changing their mind. And I think they're fantastic. Now, anecdotes don't prove anything. Some of the previous chapters are more sciencey. Maybe some future um, uh, uh, stories will be more sciencey. But I think the stories he has in this chapter are really, really good. So if you want to buckle up, we'll kind of listen to some of those stories. I'll tell them about them. And then if you want to jump on and try to change my mind about something, we can discuss changing my mind, why we would change our mind, why we wouldn't change our mind. Jump on the stream. I've got the link right there. Go ahead and hop into StreamYard, and we can chit chat today about it. So what the book is about is the chapter in the book is about is Westboro Baptist Church. So Westboro Baptist Church is famous. I think it used to be more famous. I don't hear about it too much anymore, but they are a church in Topeka, Kansas, which wasn't too far from where I lived in Kansas. And when what they do is they like to picket things. They're really famous for going to places and picketing things. So they'll go to military funerals and picket military funerals. That got a lot of hubbub, lots of stuff about signs they have about gay people going to hell and so on and so forth. So if you go to like a Kansas State football game or whatever, you might see some people from Westboro there with signs picketing. They might be street preaching. They're really famous. Um, and so uh, they're like a small church. They don't have a ton of people that go there, I don't think. This is not like many hundreds of people. I think it's a relatively small church. I think for a while it was a lot of one family. There was kind of one main guy that was sort of the head of everything, and he ran stuff, and his kids a lot of them became lawyers, and so they kind of knew the rules and they knew how to not do anything illegal, and so they just caused lots and lots of mayhem. And the story here is about how a couple of them decided to get out of Westboro Baptist Church. They decided they didn't buy it anymore. And so you might think to yourself, what would be the process that these people, these young adults, decided to leave Westboro? So let's talk about the guy, one of the boys that left. You think something like, well, he went off to school to become a nurse. Okay, well, maybe he went off to school to become a nurse, and because he went to school and became a nurse, he had, got some education. He learned some critical thinking. He thought about some of the views that they had and how mean they were being, and how rough it all was. And he realized, all these sermons I'm hearing preached on Sunday just aren't correct. This is like logically inconsistent. Maybe these interpretations are so ungenerous and so on and so forth. And so he just learned a bunch of logic. He got smarter and he figured it out. Maybe he knew someone at school, or he made a friend somewhere that they had lots of discussions with, and he just realized the logic of his argument just wasn't working out. And that's why he decided to leave. Is not why he left. He might agree with all those things now, but that is absolutely like totally unrelated to why he decided to leave Westboro Baptist Church. All the people that argued with him when he was on the picket line, anybody at school he may have argued with, he none of that mattered. He said, I was friends with those people, we chit chatted, but none of that mattered. What ended up poking holes in his sort of views on what Westboro Baptist Church was teaching happened when he injured his back. See, well, what do you mean? How could that possibly be? Well, this guy always wanted to be a doctor, and the church decided that was not okay. I don't know what the reasoning there was. They had some professions they thought were better and some that were not worse. They weren't like anti-medical stuff. It's not like they wouldn't say go to the doctor if you had cancer necessarily or whatever. I don't think they like wouldn't go to the doctor. But God is ultimately the one that heals and decides. And so therefore, maybe being a doctor was a lack of faith or something like that, because you're putting too much emphasis on what man can do. But they did say it was okay that he was a nurse. So he goes to nursing school. But while he's in nursing school, I believe, if I'm getting the timeline right, I think this is how it all happened. It was still while he was in school. He hurts his back, but like the church doesn't want him to do anything about it. Oh, hey, not only do we have Max. Hello, Max. We got Issa in the chat too. Got both of them here today, so it's fun to have all three of us lurking around. I suppose one or both are maybe working or whatnot, but glad they jumped in. Oh, we got another one. Hello, hello, hello. Good to see you here. So this guy, he's in medical school. He hurts his back, and he like really wants to do something about it. He was like, maybe he was out of school in the hospital because he hurt it by moving a patient, but he really wanted to fix it. And his parents like didn't think so. They just rejected it. They didn't want him to go to the doctor about it. They said he was faking it. He's like, why do you think I'm lying to you? You think I'm lying about how much it hurts? And the dad's like, yeah, you're lying. So what ends up happening is he gets more and more confrontation with he with his family. And he gets more and more uh uh pushed to the outside, right? He's sort of not a part of the club anymore. And it seems like what he says by the end is what ends up pushing him out wasn't so much that he had some logical, I realized our beliefs were bad. He just didn't like being a part of that group anymore because he was getting, kind of excised, partly because of his back and him really wanting to go to the doctor and him researching on the side why his back hurt him so bad. And so he really did not like that, and so he ends up changing his mind. He ends up becoming one of the people that protests Westboro Baptist Church. He becomes a big LGBT plus advocate, and so on and so forth. And it was because he was no longer part of the family. And the thing about somewhere like Westboro is it's easy to get kicked out. The rules become really, really strict. Apparently, some of the people argued it was getting stricter and stricter, and so if you didn't, toe the line, you would be ejected, and it just became easier and easier. Hard to grow a church very big when you're constantly kicking your people out. But this happened, and so the, there was a girl that had the same issue, and hers is a little more famous. I actually had heard this story before. She actually was on Twitter, and she became friends with a guy on Twitter, some guy. They talked on Twitter, they discussed, they argued, and they finally met in person one time. I think he was quite a bit older than her. I don't think they ever, so I don't think they were like in a romantic thing in this particular case, but they met together in person, not like they didn't go have lunch. She was holding protest signs in a picket line somewhere protesting something, and he showed up, and they get together, and so they see each other there and they chat. They just kind of joke back and forth. They argue a little bit, but it's like super friendly. They become um, friends, and so on and so forth. And so after a while, one of her makes an argument about some verse he said she thought she'd been interpreting incorrectly, and based on a sign she was carrying. And that was like the first chink in the armor. This friend of hers she liked, she was willing to listen to him, and she had this chink in the armor that maybe this particular sign wasn't right. And so what she did was she went and told the rest of the people in the church, hey, maybe we were interpreting these Bible verses wrong. Maybe we shouldn't, use this sign anymore. And of course, the people of the church wouldn't hear of it. They still wanted to use the sign. So she's like, well, I'm just not going to carry that sign anymore because I can't really defend that sign, but I'll still do the thing. So she continued on for a while, and then at some point she ended up giving up the whole thing. And there's stories of people having to leave, of getting ejected or whatever, because if you sin too much, you get pushed out, and it's really too bad. But these people leaving, it's just so interesting. The chinks in the armor are always have to do with relationships. A lot of times the failing relationship they have with their family and the church, or a positive relationship they have with someone outside of the church. This is what seems to have them open their mind. So as we talk about changing our mind, and if anybody wants to call in and join the stream here, call in. How quaint! It's like my Rush Limbaugh days. The call in. If anybody wants to join the stream and chit chat about something we could change our mind about, we could think about why we might be willing to change our mind. Would I be willing to change my mind because you called in, and the only reason I'm willing to consider your arguments depends on how much of a friendship we have? Boy, that would be interesting. Is that what it all is? I'm not sure. I mean, how much do these logical arguments have to do with it? I mean, it did seem to matter in the case of the girl somewhat. There was some logic there, but seemed like she wasn't even willing to consider the logic without it. Um, Another thing I was going to bring up was the 20-point peace plan for Israel and Palestine. I am wondering what people think about that. I listened to a NPR podcast on what the peace plan was, and I think that I was agreeing with quite a few of the pieces. So I'm going to look at the ChatGPT summary of the 20 points, and so this is a bad summary. So if we ever argued about any particular one of these points, we'd have to really look it up and read what it said. Point 1 is de-radicalization and security. Gaza should become a terror-free zone that doesn't threaten neighborhood states. Okay, this seems pretty boring. They're not allowed to shoot missiles at anybody anymore. Number 2, redevelopment. Gaza is to be rebuilt for the benefits of people, restoring infrastructural, essential services, etc. Great. I'm not sure who's paying for that, but obviously that sounds totally fine. Number 3, immediate ceasefire and freezing battle lines. If both sides agree, the war ends immediately. Israeli forces withdraw to an agreed line, and all military operations would be suspended front lines until further steps. I mean, I guess if you're going to have some kind of ceasefire or a peace proposal, you would actually want to have a ceasefire. So that seems reasonable that they do. You have to freeze the battle lines somewhere. Every country in the world basically is a result of some war at some point, and at some point you had to agree on where the lines were going to be. Hostage release, both alive and dead. Apparently, they wanted within 72 hours of Israel publicly accepting the plan, all hostages held in Gaza, both living and dead, are returned. seems like if you're not going to go to war, you can't hold one of the other people hostage. Sounds reasonable. Prisoner releases. Israel released 250 prisoners serving life sentences, 1,700 Gazans detained. So Israel has a whole bunch of prisoners they would have, and they would be willing to release them. Remains exchange. Israel would release remains or return Israeli hostage whose remains are returned. Israel would release the remains of 15 deceased Gazans. Okay, yep. This is trading back and forth both alive and deceased people that they cared about. Amnesty for disarmed Hamas members. So Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and give up weapons, they get to go free. They don't have to worry about, Israel holding them accountable for anything they may have done as far as killing Israelis. All's good. Israel's not gonna is agreeing to not do anything to them. Because I think in World War II, that wasn't the case. I mean, when like Germany surrendered to the Allies, they just had total surrender. Like they didn't have any choice. Like they were going to lose, and they just had to have some kind of unconditional surrender. And so there were like trials, I think, for people that committed war crimes. So it sounds like in this particular case, all supposed to be forgiven. Nobody's going to get any trials or anything like that. This isn't a surrender. Humanitarian aid and reconstruction. Number 8, immediately upon acceptance, aid flows into Gaza to support reconstruction. The plan emphasizes that aid entry should not be impeded by either party. So seems like this is fine, right? Israel obviously, while they're at war with Palestine, doesn't let aid come in, or only certain kinds of aid, whatever aid they feel like is good for them to be able to win the war. That would all be let in again. Number 9, aid delivery via neutral parties. Aid and distribution would be handled by the UN, Red Crescent. I'm not familiar with the Red Crescent, or impartial international organizations not directly controlled by Israel or Hamas. So they're making a kind of an agreement on who's going to be the one that brings in this particular aid. They're going to open border crossings in both directions. Crossings like Rafah would be open and movement both ways under mechanisms agreed earlier. So I don't know the map well enough to know where Rafah is, but apparently I assume that's a big deal to be able to have freedom of movement. Transitioning governance. Gaza would be run temporarily by a technocratic, apolitical Palestine committee responsible for day-to-day services and municipalities. I wonder who chooses them. Is this just the forgiven Hamas people, or are they going to be done another way? I mean, you say I don't even know. It's probably be really hard for them to even have an election. To have an election, you kind of have to have leaders. How can you even have an election unless someone's in charge of passing out the ballots and counting them? So I don't know who these temporary people would be. Maybe some of our other points would get us there. Number 12, international oversight via the Board of Peace. Oh, this is the one that gets all the headlines. This is the exciting one. The Board of Peace. What's the Board of Peace? The Transition Government Committee would be supervised by an international transitional body. Okay, so for a little while anyway, supposedly, there is going to be a Board of Peace that is in charge of this transition. It will be chaired by Donald Trump with other international figures, for example, Tony Blair, involved as well. So obviously, this is the one that has a lot of people scratching their heads. Does Donald Trump just want, to take credit for peace in the Middle East and say, look, I'm the main guy on the head of the board and give me my Nobel Peace Prize already? Uh, uh, Obama got one, so I want one too. This one sounds really super rough. I mean, like what kind of group would you want to be in charge? You would think like Palestine would if you were trying to have a board that was like gonna make better decisions, you might want to have, I don't know, Egypt on there or somewhere like that that maybe is closer to the region. Trump running it from America, in which he might stop taking interest at some point. This one seems shaky to me. I don't quite comprendo this one. This seems like a Donald Trump injecting himself randomly in there type of situation. Okay, so that was 12. 13. No annexation or occupation of Gaza by Israel. Israel would not annex Gaza. Oh, I hope I'm back. I disconnected there. Okay. So Israel, no annexation of Gaza. As security improves, IDF would gradually withdraw, handing over control of the new security police forces and transitional authority. 14. Staged withdrawal of Israeli forces. Withdrawal is to be done in stages tied to benchmarks of demilitarization and security guarantees. So Israel's like, yeah, we'll withdraw, but we're going to withdraw slowly, and they would probably have to define when they would have to withdraw by and what would have to show that would be done. For example, they may say like, well, we need to have UN people or someone have full access to every tunnel we know about before we're willing to withdraw from that area or something. Um, so I don't know what the details of that. And sometimes in these peace deals, the devil is in the details. So maybe this isn't good, but it does make sense. They're not just going to turn around and leave if they don't feel like all of the um, war military related things are still in place. 15, security perimeter, buffer zone retention. Even after withdrawal, security perimeter buffer presence may remain until Gaza is deemed secure to prevent renewed attacks. So, yeah, I don't know what that means. A buffer zone, so they want to make sure people can't just walk across from Palestine and kill a bunch of Israelis. So they want some kind of security there. What they mean by a buffer zone, is there people living in that buffer zone? Is this like 100 yards or 20 miles? I'm not sure. In case of Hamas noncompliance, if Hamas delays or rejects parts of the plan, Israel's scaled aid operation and security steps would still proceed in areas already handed over under the terror-free zones. If Hamas delays or rejects parts of the plan, Israel's scaled aid operation and security step would still proceed in areas already handed over under terror-free zones. So they're saying if it only gets partially done, Israel will be nice to the places that have already been handed over. Am I reading that correctly? I think so. 17, Palestinian international security and policing. Israel, Egypt, and newly trained Palestine police or security forces will coordinate to secure borders, prevent re-entry of weapons, ensure safe flow of goods under deconfliction mechanism. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, how that would work is I don't know, but sure. Notice Egypt is involved here. I think this would make sense. I don't know. I'm not even sure why Egypt would want to get involved here, but apparently they're at least willing to do this. Interfaith dialogue and narrative exchange. Oh, maybe these are platitudes here. The plan calls for interfaith dialogue process to shifting narratives among Palestinians and Israelis, promoting tolerance, peaceful coexistence, mutual benefits of peace. Well, that all sounds wonderful, but I have no idea what that might mean. Political horizon and dialogue towards self-determination. While the proposal is focused on Gaza and immediate security, it envisions a longer-term dialogue between Israel and Palestine to establish a political roadmap toward peaceful coexistence and potentially Palestine self-determination. Okay, so boy, this doesn't seem like a solution that is the end. There's more stuff that still needs to be done later. Let's seems to always be the case in Israel and Palestine. U.S./international role as a guarantor. The United States and other international actors would act as guarantors, helping enforce, monitor, and facilitate implementation, especially in security, governments, and reconstruction. So the U.S. says we promise to help. Okay, so that is the 20-point plan in a nutshell. I'm sure it's as a summary, it's probably wrong in some ways. So we can discuss it a little bit. If anybody wants to jump on, you're welcome to come on in. We say here, genocidal maniacs. This is really interesting. I'm going to throw out my thoughts here, and if you guys want to jump on and argue with me, you can. But I think Palestine and Israel are at war. So they had like a uneasy ceasefire, I guess. I know Palestine um still shot missiles into Israel sometimes. Israel's probably annexing people and causing lack of travel and whatnot. So when I say a ceasefire, it was kind of uneasy. And then after October, what I think is October 7th or whatever that date was, this was war. So Palestine came in, killed a bunch of Israelis, took hostages, and so then they're at war. And so I view war as really, really, really bad. You don't ever want to go to war. War's super bad. And you don't want anybody to want war. And so when Palestine did that to Israel, they said, hey, we're good with war. We want war. We've started a war. And what do I think Israel's position is? Oh, I think they're thrilled with the war. I mean, I think they want war too. I mean, it's good for them. I mean, if a weak country or weak area or whatever you want to call Palestine invades you and then starts a war that you could easily win, why wouldn't you do that? Like, of course you go to war. You just take all their stuff. Like why wouldn't you just like defeat them and have it? Like, I mean, why does America have all the stuff that we have? It's because we won wars. I mean, just every country is war. I mean, I think of Max in Uruguay. It's like, well, why is Uruguay Uruguay? Well, at some point, a group of people, what revolted from, I think, Spain or whatever, and I think oh man, sorry, Max, if I'm destroying Uruguayan history. I think they revolted from Argentina. They separated from Argentina and got their own independence. I think it was Argentina. So, if they would have lost that war, I think Uruguay would be part of Argentina, or a different war, they'd be a part of Spain, right? Every single countries, all their borders are based on who won what war at one time. So I think Israel absolutely wants war. And if you're at war, how do wars end? Well, both of you have to want to stop fighting, or you both have to want to stop fighting. And um, I'm not sure there's any reason why the stronger party has to stop wanting to fight until they want to. So this is what I mean by this. Japan starts a war with America, so we're at war. When Oh, Max, I did say it correctly. Good. I'm glad. I'm sure it wasn't eloquent, but I'm glad I remembered my Uruguayan history. When I was in Uruguay, we went and saw some of the people that were, I think it was some of the memorials of people that were a part of the kind of the getting the independence of Uruguay. So I don't remember their names or anything, but I think we went and saw that. So I'm glad I didn't completely forget the details of the story. So when we Israel and Japan went to war, not Israel and Japan. America and Japan went to war. Okay, Japan starts the war. When is America obligated to want peace? I mean, they kind of want peace always, right? But Japan didn't want peace, and so they're at war. So I shouldn't say when do they want peace. It's when does America want the war to end? They have to say like, okay, well, Japan wants war, so we have to go to war. We don't have a choice. So they'll bomb us either way. What do we have to say is good enough for us to get to the point that the war ends? Say like, well, could it be that America say, well, we don't want the war to end until we make Japan a vassal state or something. We run them, we totally control them, we decide who runs them, we basically make them some kind of state or colony or whatever, and we control them. It's like, could that have been what America said? We're not gonna, there's no peace until we control Japan, because we don't want Japan to bomb us ever again. They bombed us, they started a war, they want war, and the only way we're going to be able to ensure war, we don't have war, is to basically make you some kind of colony where we basically totally control you. You go, well, is that fair? It's like, hey, wars are really bad. You don't ever want to start wars, right? And if you do start a war, you better win, because if you don't win, you don't get to make any of the rules. And so what did America do? America's said, okay, we will have peace, but they didn't make the line, we're going to make you a vassal state, we're going to make you some kind of colony. That wasn't required. But America did require that Japan had unconditional surrender. We said, hey, this war doesn't end until you completely surrender. And then what do we do once they surrendered? Oh, we probably got rid of their leadership. I'm sure we made them have a constitution. We did all kinds of stuff to try to make sure that they didn't attack us ever again. That was like priority number one. We don't want Japan to attack us anymore. We didn't, if we don't want war, we wanted to try to make sure Japan didn't have war. I think a part of uh, we helped Japan rebuild to a degree. And why do we do that? A lot of that was selfish reasons, right? We don't want war. We didn't want Japan to like start another war again. So in Germany after World War One, what did they do? Well, there was another World War, right? And so after World War Two, people decided rebuilding Germany to a degree was a better way to not have a World War Three. These were like kind of selfish reasons to not have to not have war. So when a war begins, somebody wants war. How does the war end? You have to both not want war. And I think the two sides get to pick when the war is going to end, that they think makes them secure, that they're good to go. And so, what should, so they're at war. Palestine, what do they want? Well, they would love to just take over Israel, but they can't. So why they started a war in the first place, I have no idea. I mean, just wanting to be at war when you have no chance to win. I do not comprendo. I don't know if they think like Allah's on their side and there's some sort of religious component that makes them think they're going to win this war. I don't know if they think Iran is going to come on board. Maybe they think that suddenly Egypt's going to, or some of the surrounding countries that share some religious uh, camaraderie with them are going to come and join the attack, but they can't win. So I have no idea why they want war. Israel's like, if Israel says, well, we want war because we can take the land, and so it seems like Israel should be like, I think Israel's justified in saying, yeah, we're at war. We want unconditional surrender from Palestine. Unconditional surrender is what we demand. We're at war, and we want that. So, I don't know that it's unreasonable that Israel should demand unconditional surrender. And as we look at the 20-point peace plan, I think it's really, really interesting because Japan, compared to us at the end of the war, was way stronger than Palestine is compared to Israel. Like, Japan could have kept fighting. Okay, the nukes would have been bad. I guess we just dropped nuke after nuke after nuke. Maybe there was some super big asymmetry there. But I mean, Israel has nukes. Israel could nuke Palestine like every day if they wanted to. So Palestine has absolutely no chance in this war. So I don't know why Israel doesn't just say unconditional surrender or nothing. Unconditional surrender. That's all we would accept. We're at war. We want unconditional surrender. Why does Israel accept anything besides unconditional surrender? When two sides go to war, the goal is to win the war. I mean, Palestine's government should care about the Palestinian people and what's best for them. When Japan decided to surrender, it was like, yeah, these nukes are bad and our people are going to die like crazy. so we should probably quit. At some point, Germany was like, yeah, well, they're invading. Not only our military people died, tons of women and children and whoever else are dying. I'm sure, we didn't have too many cameras, but I'm sure the bombs didn't accidentally. I'm sure the bombs, periodically didn't just hit the male Germans between the ages of 18 and 40, right? They were hitting whoever. And in the same way that Germany just bombed Britain, they just threw bombs into Britain. So did we just throw bombs into Germany, terror campaigns or whatever. And so this is like war. War is terrible, and you should never start wars. You should not want wars. But if you're in a war, what you have to do is win. You have to win. If you don't win, like you don't get to decide anything. And so I just don't know why Israel, why they are in war, just says, yes, this war will end when we get unconditional surrender. I just think that's what they should just demand. I think the only reason they don't have enough courage to demand unconditional surrender in this war is because of outside pressure from other people. So lots of people saying, "Oh, this is terrible. The Palestinians are super weak." I super agree. Palestine has no chance. They have no chance. They're gonna lose this war. They have absolutely no chance. So people are like empathetic toward Palestine. They say, well, Israel, the U.S. should put pressure on Israel to do this or that. We should have all the other Western nation put pressure. We should have the UN put pressure on Israel to do this or that. And so there is tons and tons of outside pressure on Israel to not just demand unconditional surrender. And I'm not super sure why. And so sometimes people argue about who's good and who's bad in a war. And I just kind of have this view, and people are, if you want to join, you're welcome to. We can you're welcome to discuss it with me. But I think war's super, super bad, and you shouldn't want war. And I am unconvinced that either party doesn't want war. I think they're both thrilled to have it. And so why me as a person here in America should I get to decide um who why they should or shouldn't want war? If they want war, why do they not get to have it? Does Palestine want war? I think they do. Israel wants war. I think they do. Who doesn't want the war? Americans, I guess. Americans are the ones. We don't want the war. What, people in the West don't want the war? Um, Situation World War II in Israel is significantly different. In fact, most wars don't end with unconditional surrender. Consider the Korean War from the example of war ended with arms. Oh, I completely agree. Not all wars necessarily end with unconditional surrender, but they do end with some kind of, like, both of them don't want war anymore, right? They both don't want war. So America and Japan could have gone back and forth. We could have never developed a bomb, and eventually just say, okay, this was stupid. America's like, hey, we're never really going to take over Japan. Japan could go, yeah, we're never really going to take over the U.S. We're at some kind of stalemate, and we'll go ahead and have a treaty. And they both wouldn't want war anymore. That seems to be like a possible thing that could happen a lot. I always kind of bring it back to the Bible times. It's so funny. There's this verse in the Old Testament. It's like, and it was time for the people to, it was time for the kingdoms to go out for war. It's like, what they did, like every fall. Oh, wartime. Go fight each other. It just super super odd. And obviously, those wars, if they were like seasonal, began and stopped, began and stopped. So yeah, there's way many different reasons why wars can end. I just don't have no idea why Israel wouldn't demand this war ends this way. They're at war. Why did they have to decide? Why do they have to agree that the war would end one way or another? I don't understand. What's the leverage that Palestine has in this war? I think the only leverage Palestine has is make American citizens feel bad for them. That's what they got. I don't know why else. Why did they start this war? Or why would they want this war in the first place? I don't know if it's a religious thing. or what? Israel does not want war. They want peace. They have demonstrated with their conscience for peace for Egypt and Israel. Oh, I agree. It's possible to have peace with Israel. As you mentioned here, they have peace with Egypt and they have peace with Jordan. So I think it's like possible to have peace with Israel. So if you ever say, can Israel have peace? I think it is possible. Now, is it also good for Israel to have this war? I think it is. They Why wouldn't they take more land? I don't know. I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, I don't know why it's not good. Now, do I think it's possible that if Hamas says, okay, or Palestine says, okay, we're never going to shoot another missile in. We'll get rid of all of our, get rid of all the tunnels. And America puts a whole bunch of pressure on Israel. Israel go, literally not worth our time to have this war anymore. We'll have peace with. Sorry, my headphones keep turning off. We don't want to have this war with Palestine anymore and those stuff. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's true. Hard to know. I think it's a bit hard to know. I um I don't know. I do know Israel can you can have peace with Israel. Um so it seems like it's possible. Dr. J, unrelated, but really, really want to know how you keep the insides of your beautiful windows clean and how you get privacy at night. So off topic. Sorry. Well, the key to keeping your windows clean is hiring the cleaning person that knows what they're doing to clean them. That's how I keep them clean. And then this is the living room. I sleep in a completely different room that only has one windows with lots of shade in it. So that's the secret to the windows. But yeah, these windows, they show the backyard and the golf course and the pool behind me. So it's pretty cool. But someone else cleans them. I've never cleaned them. Israeli does not want the land of Gaza. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't want them. They don't want it. They think it would be too hard to deal with. I'm not sure. I don't think America wanted Japan. I mean, I think us trying to control Japan after World War II, like make it a vassal state or a colony or whatever, would have been a royal pain for everybody. Japan would have hated it. They would have been constantly wanting to revolt, and it would have probably just been a major thorn on our side. So I don't think that's what we wanted from Japan, and so maybe Israel doesn't want that from Gaza. I'm not super sure. Israel's current politics are super weird. I mean, obviously, being in war for their current leader seems to be kind of good for them, and so um, so the um, Israel's current situation is weird. So with Netanyahu and whatnot, I think that makes Israel more likely to want to be at war. If it's just good for Netanyahu, I could see him uh just if it just personally benefits him, that puts a really big thorn in the side of saying Israel doesn't want to be at war. If Netanyahu personally wants to be at war, that could be a big problem. And it does seem like he would have reasons to possibly um, want to have that continue. The reasons are linked to 500 years of political issues with both Israel and Palestine, and I can't post them all. Both and political parties have to leave power. So yeah, there's a super long history, but like every countries, all the countries in the world have a long history, you know. And Israel and Palestine has even longer one. But at some point, every country, I think, has wars, and then lines are chosen based on the ends of those wars, and that's the country. And after World War II, we kind of said we don't want people to um, invade other countries anymore. But prior to like World War II, we just invading all over the place, right? Every country's like Rome was boundaries, and Germany shows up, and the Holy Roman Empire boundaries changed, and all that. That's how they always end. After World War II, there was a shakeup, right? Israel gets created. Britain won the war, so they drew some lines to stick Israel in the middle there, right? So this is how all countries are created. You have a war, and then at some point you draw lines after that war. And some people like it, some people don't. Sometimes the lines stick, sometimes they don't. I mean, it seems like Russia's still trying to redraw the lines, right? They agreed to the lines of Ukraine, in the 90s or whatever it was, and now they don't like it, and they want to be able to change the lines. Um, Again, gonna do a few comments here. Don't be afraid to like, subscribe if you have time to jump on. I've got about 15 more minutes. I could go, but we may end a little bit before that. Um, if you want to jump on, join the stream, you are certainly welcome to. If you want to change my mind about something, whether it's this particular topic or something else. I'm not even a super expert on this topic per se. I'm just kind of throwing out my opinion. So if you are going to really want to become an expert on this, you might want to listen to someone else. But just kind of throwing it out there. I thought the 20-point peace plan was interesting. It seems okay. I mean, boy, the whole Trump gets to be in charge thing just seems so silly. You know what I mean? It just seems so silly. It's sort of hard to take the peace plan seriously. So that would be my main thing. I would also have to really look into the details of some of these points to see how much I thought they were good. Oh man, I'm gonna push buttons here. And we got a guest. Hey, welcome. Saw you last.
Hey, how's it going, Dr. J?
Good. I'm doing well. Um,
So,
anything you want to change my mind about, or just want to talk about changing your mind in particular? Want to talk? I obviously brought up a hot button issue here.
yeah, what's your position on the Israel-Palestine thing, or what you said you tend to be pretty pro-Israel? Could you clarify that for me in terms of like what that means?
Yeah, sure. Did you hear my spiel I've been talking about for the last few minutes, or you just kind of hop on?
I just got in like a minute ago, so
Yeah, I just did a long spiel, so I'll try to give you the summary of it. I think that Israel and Palestine are at war currently,
okay.
and they had a sort of tentative ceasefire at some point. They weren't really at war at some point. And then after, what was the date? October 7th? Boy, I can't remember the
Hmm.
date. Is that, yeah, October
That's
7th?
right.
The war began, renewed again, right? Like they've been warring back and forth for a long time, but they had kind of a tentative ceasefire and the war began. And so now the two countries are at war. And my view is that both countries want war. Palestine wants war. They wouldn't have invaded. They wouldn't have, rekindled the war if they didn't want it. They want war. I'm befuddled why they want it. I don't know if it's religious or they think the other countries are gonna come and help them, but they have no chance to win. So why they wanted to start the war, I am not super sure. And then I tend to think that Israel also kind of wants war. The war's good for them. Israel's going to win, right? Like, give me a
Yeah,
break. Unless the other countries around them are going to like come help, Israel could absolutely just super crush them. So I tend to think Israel's fine with the war too. They get to win. They get to take more land. And so I don't know why they are super against the war. And I think war is super terrible, which is why I think you shouldn't start them. And when you get in a war, I think your goal should be to win. That's it. You win the war. Um, and
yeah,
so I think Israel should try to win the war. And so what should Israel demand? So we went over the 20-point peace plan, and my view is I'm not even sure why Israel would accept this or any plan. I think Israel should say what America said to Japan: unconditional surrender, or this war keeps going because we're going to
so,
win.
so I think the difficulty with this one is the sort of asymmetric nature of the warfare. Do you think that Israel is acting appropriately and with restraint in Gaza, or is it more like Israel is just using whatever means at their disposal to win?
I don't think that when you're at war with another country, just because you have more guns than them, you have to act in a different way than them.
Mm,
You're at war. Like you shouldn't. War is so bad. So we don't know. We don't remember how bad World War II was, right? Like remember
sure.
it. So uh, Germany just dropped bombs indiscriminately on Britain,
Yeah,
right? So many people died. And then when the Allies went into Germany, what did the Allies do? Drop bombs all over the place and killed whoever, right? We
right.
what did anybody care about in World War II? winning the
Victory
war.
mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think that the goal is to just, the country just wants to win the war. And then I also tend to think like, how many of your own people should you sacrifice in order to keep the other team's people alive?
So do you lend much credit? So it seems like, to your point, prior to World War II, there wasn't this notion of a war crime per se, I would say. I mean, and certainly prior to the Geneva Convention, do you feel like those prescriptions really matter, or is it something that countries mostly pay lip service to when it comes down to it?
I think they don't matter. I think ultimately the goal is to win, and that's it.
Yeah. Well,
So if you want to strap bombs to your children and have them go kill people, you can.
right.
If you want to indiscriminately bomb cities and kill whoever, I guess you can. I mean, don't go to war. It's so bad. Like war is so bad.
I guess what I struggle with is the general pattern. Would you disagree with the fact that it's been Israel's goal for a long time to essentially um, break the notion of Palestinian identity as a people? Like, is that something that you like, going back certainly to like the first Intifada, but prior to that, even there's this, Israel is premised on the idea of the idea you always hear, the phrase you often hear from Zionists still. Things have changed a little bit, but is a land without a people for a people without a land, right? And so I definitely feel like, beyond just like the warfare aspect, that there's a desire for erasure on the part of the Israelis when it comes to the Palestinians, and that reflects in their policies. What is your feelings on that?
It's totally possible that's what they want. It's possible that China wants to completely erase Taiwan as a people. What they want doesn't matter. It's whether they want. It's whether they go to war.
Yeah,
I don't know, right? Like, there's a lot of weak countries out there that would love to completely erase the strong countries. I'm sure I could find lots of countries. Iran would probably love to erase America off the face of the map. Maybe that is what Israel wants, or a part of Israel wants, or a coalition, or I don't know, whatever the percentage is. That could be. But they could sit there on their side of the border and go, we really want to wipe them all out. We don't think they deserve to live at all, but going to war isn't worth it, so we're not going to do it. And Palestine could say, we hate Israel. We want to kill out. We want to wipe all of them, but the war is not worth it. But right now, that's not their views. For that, it seems like both parties, it is worth it to go to war.
Yeah, I'm just curious because, like, I wonder what the Palestinians ought to do then, because the problem is that we've had. I mean, they certainly haven't helped matters with like the earlier wars on Israel, right? Like, a lot of the like territory that's now effectively under Israel's control was after the 6 Day War, I think, or the Yom Kippur War. I forget which one. Where the Jordan used to hold the West Bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like, for the Palestinians, there's this notion, like, as to why like organizations like Hamas might be appealing beyond the religious aspect, which is a whole other thing.
Right.
Like, there's a certain sense of like existential struggle in the conflict, and I've been trying to think as well, like, what sense did October 7th make in any sort of strategic calculus? And I feel like in some sense it's like an act of desperation, but I think in another sense it's like wanting to provoke Israel into something to get concessions from other countries.
Here's my two options on why they did it, and they both seem like a terrible idea. But one is, we think God's on our side, and it's just a religious thing, and you do the right thing that God tells you no matter what, right? So people do crazy stuff when they think God's on their side. Happens. I'm not sure that's it, but that's an option. Second option could be provoke Israel, make everyone around feel super bad for Palestine, and then everyone else come to Palestine's aid, and then they get
Yeah.
concessions. Those are the only two things I can come to grips with that they thought it was a good idea. One is sort of an irrational, God's on our side, or I'm just, I hate to, I tend to not think it's that one, right? Like just some
Mhm.
irrational, It's worth it. We get to kill X amount, even if a bunch of ours dies. But the fun and the God pleasingness of this is going to be worth it. I have a hard time with that one. I do think the religion matters, but I don't think that one makes sense. I think that Palestine might think that they are in a stronger position than they are, and that their neighbors are going to come to their aid. And it
I think that was
does,
part of it. Yeah.
and I don't think it doesn't seem like Egypt has a super big interest in coming to their aid, or Jordan,
No.
or
Yeah.
whatever.
I
And
mean,
if they don't come to their aid, Palestine is toast. And then you say, okay, so what does Palestine do? I think their only hope is to say, we'll agree to a peace plan, pick a line of where the boundaries are. We want our own country. We promise we'll let the UN walk through every single one of our tunnels. We'll get rid of every single gun we have. We'll be super totally peaceful. And this is the line, but we want all the countries around us to agree that if Israel crosses this line, that they're going to like blow Israel out of the water or do something. Now, could Israel break it and the other countries not
yeah.
do their side of the deal or whatever? Of course. But it's like, what other leverage does Palestine have? I don't really know.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess my thing with that is that when you look at the West Bank specifically, I mean, Israel has been eroding any sort, and there's like strategic reasons, I think, why Israel is in particular, because they withdrew from Gaza, right? They withdrew from Gaza, they ended their settlements, but at the same time they pivoted to the West Bank. And I know now they're talking about, different plans for Gaza and stuff. I feel like in some sense the West Bank is kind of a lost cause for the Palestinians. So Gaza, having a state in Gaza is maybe the best that they can hope for at this point. But I'm just, yeah.
They have to hope war never happens again, because it's all so bad for them. They can't win. They can't win the war. They need war to end. They need lines to be drawn, and they need international pressure to make it so those lines don't get crossed. Those are their hopes, right?
Mhm.
And I think they might have the international pressure. A lot of people feel really, really bad for Palestine, even more than they
Yeah.
do for Ukraine. Like, I think Ukraine's the ultimate feel good story, in the sense that they literally weren't invading
Yeah, they did
Russia at all.
literally nothing wrong.
Literally nothing. There's like no
Yeah.
big history. There's no complicated, bad things have
Right.
happened both sides. Yeah. So we should just feel like ultimate empathy for Ukraine, it seems like, but yet Palestine seems to get a lot more love. So I think they might be able to put the international pressure on, that if they just agreed to peace, never invaded again, we had
Yeah.
some lines, and try to make those lines stick. I think that's their only hope. They just have no leverage. It's very, their leverage has just eroded as more and more countries have made peace with Israel. They just
Well, and
have.
I think that's I have to run, but I think that's part of why October 7th happened, was that you had countries that were normalizing relations with Israel. I think like Qatar and Saudi Arabia in particular were doing so, or I forget the exact. It was certainly Saudi Arabia. I actually do have to run, but yeah, I guess in summary, I would say like their best option probably is to focus on Gaza and having an actual independent state within Gaza, because that's the only thing that is viable. The West Bank is so split into Bantustans that it's just not viable. But I do have to run, Dr. J.
Yeah, good to have you on.
Later.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see you. All right, and it is time for me to jump back to work. So good to have everyone here today. Leo, I got a bunch of chats in there. Sorry, I was concentrating on my conversation. I didn't quite follow all that you were saying. I'm sure you were saying something smart there. You're welcome to jump on next week if you want to chit chat about this subject or another one. But I got to go back to work. Good to see everybody, and don't forget to like the stream, and we'll see you later.